I might have to graduate to Pinot Noir, which this area, in the early days, well, there wasn't too much Santa Rita Hills going on. So maybe if the Santa Rita Hills was around 20, 30 years ago, we would have been talking about these Pinots like we're talking about the Nielsen with the history.
Right.
But what's so exciting about Santa Rita Hills right now? It's one of my favorite areas for Pinot Noir, but, and it's obviously one of yours.
Yeah, that it is. But I still work with, in fairness to Santa Maria Valley, some of the Pinots coming out of Santa Maria are really amazing Pinot Noirs. I started Byron in 1984, sold to Mondavi family in 1990, and Mondavis and myself, spent quite a bit of time looking at clono rootstock density trials on Pinot. I think you might know that. But it was the reason that we didn't have to sell, Mondavis didn't have to buy Byron Winery. So the way I look at it is, Tim Mondavi and I have known I've known the Mondavi family. You weren't in the wine business, I know the Mondavi family, so I knew him for quite a few years before we started Byron. But Tim and I are as passionate about Pinot. You don't want to be in a room with the two of us and try to get a word in edgewise when we talk about Pinot.
Yeah.
Now, Tim's that way with Cabernet too, of course. But what it ended up to be is a situation where we knew that we had to work together. So we ended up selling the Byron Winery to the Mondavi family for Pinot Noir because both Tim and I were convinced that there was better quality potential for Pinot Noir in Santa Maria Valley than what we'd seen to that point. And this would be documented here, but there are 5 variables. So once you've got the site, you have to have the site dialed in, then it's going to be the rootstock that you're going to graft onto Pinot, the clone of the Pinot Noir. The row direction is huge, and that's where we got it wrong in many of the vineyards in the area. And the reason row direction is so important is it's a very cold growing region. We need to really maximize how much sunlight we get into the fruit zone. And most of the vineyards, because of topography, were planted east-west, so the sun was right. And this ever changes, we're all in trouble where the sun rises in the east and sets in the west.
Right.
We're going right over the ridge line of the row, so
Yeah.
you really there's a shadow most of the day on the fruit zone. So we we sold the winery to the Mondavi family in 1990. In 1991, we were anxious to do this, so that's when we planted this experimental 17-acre vineyard, pretty large experiment. All the row direction was north-south. We knew that was right, but what we didn't know is the right rootstock, clone, density, number of vines per acre, and trellis type. So that's what the 17 acres was. Every 4th row was a different combination of stock, clone, density, and so it was pretty bizarre.
That's hardcore.
But it was, and it was something that I couldn't have afforded to do without them.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but in life, I usually find that there are really 2 things that are really important: time and money.
Yes.
And that was a wonderful relationship. I had the time.
They had the money.
So, hey, it worked out. But what we did is we really fast-tracked, I think, Pinot Noir plantings in Santa Barbara County because we really did come up with some of the better combinations of rootstock, clone. We understood row direction and density. And I've always been a type of person that wants to share that with their fellow winemakers because, we want to improve the quality of the region for all of our recognition. So anyway, but Santa Maria now, I think the Pinots overall, now that we've changed some of these things, there's some incredible Pinots coming out of the Santa Maria Valley. There's a vineyard that we, the Mondavis, planted right after we made our conclusion on this 17-acre experimental trial, planted in 91. We didn't plant any other vineyards until 99. Huge commitment to wait. And that was probably my biggest challenge with the Mondavi family, was to make sure we would wait. But we planted the Gary vineyard, which is further west, a little bit higher, closer to 101 in Santa Maria. And that has turned out to be just an incredible vineyard, spelled Garey, named after the soil type, which I think was named after the little town of Gary, don't blink. Has nothing to do with Gary's vineyard, of course, in Monterey. But the Pinots that are coming off of that, and the Nielsen vineyard, which is, of course, also known as the Byron vineyard, are just producing really incredible Pinots now. But had we not done some of those changes, we'd still be in the dark ages with Santa Maria Valley Pinot. Now, we compare what we're doing in Santa Maria with what we're doing in Santa Rita, and the wines are different. The climate, and I won't get into detail, the climate, they're very cold growing regions. And the further you go west in both Santa Maria and Santa Rita, because they're transverse valleys, we get to the point where we have to stop planting. We can't go any further west because we don't have enough heat units. But we see, whether it's Santa Maria or Santa Rita, a huge difference between the east end of the appellation further from the ocean and then the colder Pinots that are coming off of both Santa Maria and Santa Rita. But they're all good wines. They're really great wines. It's just that they're different, which is great. It's wonderful. So I like to have in our Pinot Noir portfolio is still work with the Nielsen and the Gary Pinots, and they're just luscious, rich, round. Santa Maria soils tend to be a little sandier, which ends up giving wines that have a little softer, rounder, more approachable structure. Santa Rita Hills tends to be more the clay, loam, calcareous soil, so the structure of Santa Rita Hills tends to be a little firmer. There are some exceptions. Santa Rita Hills Pinots tend to have more of the blackberry and some blueberry and sometimes some minerality. Santa Maria Pinots tend to have a lot of that beautiful dark cherry and some brown spice. So it's once you kind of get that, you can kind of really do a blind tasting, and they pretty much line up as you might expect based on those traits.
As you go through the transverse valleys, what's the temperature difference between Santa Maria and Santa Rita? Like, because we hear Santa Rita is kind of cooler. What you're saying is Santa Maria is like freaking cold.
So well, how far west are we?
No, I'm saying like, all things considered, west to west, east to east, between the two. Are we talking, 3 degrees difference, or are we talking?
You'd have,
or you can't generalize based on the size of the valley, or.
I'm going to say that the problem with the generalizing is we stop planting when we know we're running out of heat units.
Right. So, and people are always associated, cool climate this, we're going cooler climate. And it's like, what is really, you know what I mean? Like, Santa Rita never got that cool climate moniker.
Santa Maria.
To me, yeah, Santa Maria.
Well,
and Santa Rita is like, cool climate. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
If it had been the opposite way, where Santa Rita was planted before Santa Maria, it probably happened too, because it took a long time for people to get their minds wrapped around the fact that it can actually be relatively cold south of San Francisco.
Right.
And that was, I didn't even know. I'm from Northern California. I go, wow, what Pinot? Somebody told me about the new Sanford and Benedict Pinot. I've always wanted to do Pinot.
Right.
And Ken, have you tried this? I go, no, where is it? It's in Santa Barbara County. I go, no way.
It's like a desert.
And I went down and tasted it, and that was the epiphany. I'm going, okay, I'm a believer now. This is where I'm going to make my Pinot. So it's, but I didn't answer your question. So the difference between the east end, if you compare the east end of both, it's a little bit easier to say what the differences are, and then compare the west end. Right. Rio Vista in Santa Rita Hills is the furthest east of the vineyards in Santa Rita Hills, and it tends to be a little bit more Santa Maria Valley-like in a general concept. But as you go further west in Santa Rita Hills, the color gets darker. So you're going from the dark cherry to the dark, blackberry type of color, and the same thing is happening with the flavor and the aromatics. Santa Maria tends to have more cherry component, but at the east end of Santa Rita, you have these dark cherry components. You keep on going further west, the wines get darker, more of the black fruit, and more structure in them. One thing about Santa Rita, at the cold end of both Santa Maria and Santa Rita will have firmer structure than Santa Maria. And that's because of the soil. Not so much because of the temperature difference. Okay, so what are we on?
Well, I'm just rocking some Clos Pepe right here, just real quick. I love the vibrancy with the intensity. It's like having your cake and eating it too.
That is, yeah. This is Clos Pepe in a very good vintage. Clos Pepe is, of course, it's been a vineyard that's had a great reputation for quite a few years. It was in the first planting, of course, was Sanford and Benedict in 1971. Second planting was the Babcock Vineyard in 1984, and then the next generation in the early 90s was the explosion. So Clos Pepe, Kargasaki, and a lot of those, really what we think of today as great vineyards, not that Babcock and Sanford and Benedict are certainly on that list big time. But it's just, from get-go, the vineyards that were planted early on are making great wines now. And then I see some of the newer vineyards that are being planted on steeper hillsides, higher density. We really began to perfect the rootstock clone combinations. And I look at the wines that are coming off of some of the new vineyards and go, oh my God, just wait till these things get some age on these wines. And it just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And we're not shortcutting Santa Maria, we're seeing the same thing there, but it's more dramatic in Santa Rita Hills.
More pronounced, yeah.
We have very steep mountains. The Santa Rita Hills is a mountain range that runs east-west right down the center of the Santa Rita Hills. So you have this opportunity to plant Pinot up on a hillside right in the middle of the valley, which you don't have in Santa Maria. Mm. So it gives us some very extreme Pinots. So when we go from the three Pinots that we have today, the first one is just released 2011 Santa Rita, which is, if you want to know what Santa Rita tastes like in 2011, in particular, taste that wine. Okay. That's the three vineyard blend. Rio Vista, Rita's Crown, this incredibly beautiful, spectacular wines. Vineyard that's right above actually Sea Smoke, which is pretty much in the center of the appellation. Mm-hmm. And Rio Vista that, and then La Rinconada vineyard, which is a little bit further west. So it kind of puts the three components together. So that's a good overview of wine. Clos Pape, of course, a very specific vineyard on the north side of the appellation, west end, but it's going to be harvested in the mid-zone of when we harvest the grapes, because the north side isn't quite as extreme cold because it doesn't have quite the wind run that the south side has.
Got it.
And of course, the more the wind is coming right off the ocean, the colder it's going to be. This Rancho La Viña, this is the 2009. We always hold it longer in barrel and bottle. It is an extreme wine. It's we're Sanford Benedict. Then the next vineyard to the west is La Rinconada. The next vineyard to the west is La Encantada. And then right to the west of La Encantada up on the hill is Rancho La Viña. There's only one other vineyard further west in the appellation, and it's at the appellation's edge. And it's actually now been broken up into two sections. And for those of you that follow Pinot Noir, you will definitely hear about the two vineyards that are owned by the same company. One is Bent Rock, and the other is Radian. And I didn't name them, but they will go down in the history books of Pinot Noir, incredible vineyards. And we're on the edge.
Wow, so basically Central Coast 101 in about 12 minutes. I'm a wine dork. That was amazing.
When you're ready for Central Coast 102, let me know.
I know. No, yeah. Next time, send in the clones. So, Ken, thanks so much.
The clone guy is always happy to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
Absolute pleasure for us talking to one of the legends of the California wine industry. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.